Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Shalom AZ Ministries, House of New Beginnings. If you're joining us for the first time, we'd love to connect. Just drop a note in the chat and tell us where you're watching from. When we gather together each day and each week, our heart's desire is to truly encounter the presence of the King of the universe, not simply for our own emotional experience or to check off some kind of religious to-do list. Our desire is to meet with Him and to be transformed into the likeness of His character in ever-increasing measure. We want to be like Him and to be transformed so that we can be transformative in the places where He has planted us, that we would be water bottles in the desert, overflowing with the life and refreshing newness that He is pouring into us. Today, as we gather in Yeshua's name, let's remember He's here with us. He sees you, He knows you, and He's working in your life to shape you into His likeness so you can radiate His love wherever you are. In addition to joining us for Daily Manna each day at 10 a.m., we hope you're able to join us for Shabbat service on Saturday at 10:30 Arizona time.
Our Torah portion this week is Numbers 25, verse 10 through Numbers 30, verse 1. Our Haftorah portion is 1 Kings 18, verse 46 through 1 Kings 19, verse 21. And our New Covenant reading is Romans 11, verses 2 through 32.
Please download our Shalom AZ app on your phone or streaming device. It's the easiest way to watch services, access devotionals, and share teachings with friends. Just search Shalom AZ in your app store. We want to say thank you to everyone who gives so faithfully. Your generosity is an act of worship to the Lord, and it makes it possible for us to share Yeshua and the richness of His Word with our community and beyond. We couldn't do this without you. As you give, you're not only meeting needs, you're partnering with the Lord to bring life and transformation to countless hearts. We are grateful that as you give to Him, you are entrusting Shalom AZ Ministries to be the faithful stewards of your worship and giving. The easiest way to give is through our app or online at shalomaz.com/give. You can also mail a check to our P.O. Box. As we dive into the Word today, we want to remind you that each Daily Manna teaching comes with a companion devotional guide. This guide is designed to help you go deeper beyond the live stream, whether in your own personal devotion time or as a resource to help you in ministering to others. You can use it in so many ways, for daily reflection and journaling, as a family devotional around the dinner table, or even to start a simple Bible study during your lunch break with coworkers you're ministering to. No matter how you use it, these devotionals are meant to help you not just hear the Word, but to live it out and share it with others. If the Holy Spirit has put someone on your heart, a neighbor, a friend, a relative, this can be an easy way to invite them into a conversation about Yeshua in a natural, approachable way. You can download today's companion devotional right from our app or our website at shalomaz.com. Thanks for being here. Let's let Yeshua have His way in us today.
Well, this morning we are in a passage that in 1 Peter chapter 3. And Peter is dealing with strangers and sojourners, you who are in a place you didn't choose to be. How do you walk out the love, you walk out the gospel, walk out your calling to this you were called? How do you walk that out in the place where you found yourself, in the place where God has placed you, where He's allowed you to be? He says you've been chosen for this. He knew you'd be here. And so you've got and again, there's this recognition that this world, is not our home, that we are strangers, we're outsiders, that it's not our first place of allegiance, and yet God has placed us here, and for what purpose? To make you are a chosen generation, a royal priest, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, a set apart people, chosen as God's own possession, so that you can make known the excellency, show forth the praises of him who called you out of darkness into light. You're here on purpose. And so he had said, I'm just going to read through to catch us up to where we're at now. Loved ones, please, as outsiders and strangers, I urge you, he's saying. Verse 11 of 2. Keep a distance from the cravings of your flesh, whichever ones wage war against your soul. Your way of life among the nationals, among the peoples that you're around, let it be beautiful, in order that when they're speaking against you as though you were doing evil, from the beauty of the things you do, they'll glorify God in the day of his visitation. He's watching over you. Submit yourselves, be submitted to every human authority because of the Lord, whether to a king as one far above, or a leader, a ruler, is sent through God, through him, to bring judgment to those who do evil, or praise to those who do good. Because this is what God desires, that your doing of good, your good doing, will muzzle that which is of the foolishness of men who don't know. As free people, and not like a freedom that's concealing evil, but as from God, freedom that's from God, be his servants. Be God's servants, God's slaves. Honor, respect everyone. Love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. So now he begins to address the most vulnerable, the ones who have the least power, the ones in terms of dealing with adults. He's saying, because unlike Paul, he doesn't address the children here. And so he says, household servants, slaves, submit yourselves, be submitted with all respect to your masters, not only to those who are good and gentle, but also to the crooked. And we talked about yesterday that this is not somehow a thumbs up to slavery. It's a recognition of the present situation, of the brokenness of the place in which you find yourself. How are you going to, as a slave in that household, how are you going to show forth the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into light? What's the mode? What do we do in that situation? And he points to our pattern. He points to the one who is our pattern, our model. He says, be submitted with all respect to your masters, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the crooked. This is indeed grace, supernatural strength. If through being aware of God, knowing that God's there, knowing that he is with you, if being aware of God, a person endures the distress of suffering unjustly, what kind of credit, what kind of honor is it if you're getting a beating for when you sin, and you endure that? If you endure beatings for sinning, but if in your doing of good you suffer, you're enduring, and then you're enduring with hope, that is grace. This is a supernatural empowerment from God. In verse 21 it says, into this, indeed, this is what you were called into. This is what you were invited to, since Messiah also suffered greatly for you, leaving behind a pattern for you so that you will follow. He said, follow me. So you'll follow after his footsteps. So now it shows us what he did and who he is. Committed no sin, nor was there found any deceit or falseness in his mouth. Who, having been insulted, abused, did not return the insults to the abuse. Suffering, he didn't threaten. Instead, he handed it over to the one who judges righteously. Who, and again, speaking of him, he's our example, our model, who our sins he carried up in his body upon the tree in order that the sins would die and in righteousness we might live. Who by his wounds you were healed. Because you, like sheep, you were wandering, but now you have returned back to the shepherd the one watching over your souls. Likewise, verse 1 of chapter 3, in the same way, homios, in the same way, wives, be submitted to your own husbands, so that even if some don't obey the message, by the wife's conduct, without a word, they may be won over, as they observe your pure and reverent conduct. I'm going to read through the whole section and we'll go back. Verse 2. Actually, let me open it so I don't have to roll through all my notes here. Verse what? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do that again. Okay. As they observe your chaste and respectful behavior. Oh, I'm in the wrong version. Sorry. No, that went NASV. Just a second. Don't let your beauty be external, braiding the hair and wearing gold jewelry or fine clothes. Instead, let it be in the hidden person of the heart with the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is the way the holy women who put their hope in God used to beautify themselves long ago, being submitted to their own husbands. Just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, you have become her daughters by doing what is good and not fearing intimidation. In the same way, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. Though they are weaker partners, honor them as equal heirs of the grace of life. In this way, your prayers will not be hindered. So, this is, my dad used to he used to joke about that passage. You know, Abraham, it says Abraham was called Lord by Sarah. This is a passage that, as I address it, as we look at it this morning, and we're gonna look at it, and we're obviously in just one morning here. This is it's a lot of information there. One of the challenging things about certain passages like this, and even the previous passage in previous generations, is that these passages have been used to abuse and to dominate and to subjugate, so that slave owners had used the passages about slavery and these things in order to justify, and they used these scriptures to uphold their right to enslave. And where it becomes, what we have to recognize again is what Peter is doing is he's speaking to believers. What do you do? How are you supposed to live in a broken world? He's not telling believers to perpetuate the brokenness, right? He's not saying perpetuate slavery, perpetuate a dominating subjugation. That's not what you see in the gospel. What you see in Yeshua was revolutionary in the way that he elevated those who were on. He elevated women, and he elevated those who were discarded, those who were marginalized, those who were seen as nothing. And when you read where Paul writes, there's no longer slave or free, there's no longer Greek or Jew, slave or free, male or female, and it's dealing with it in a hierarchical way, that for us as walking as believers, we're supposed to be those who are liberators. And what's supposed to drive us all is love. And so the tendency with any of these passages, there's a tendency. I think it's a human tendency. I don't think it's a cultural tendency. I don't think it's a societal tendency. I think it's a human tendency. That when something gets pointed at us, we go, well, what about them? Like we talked about yesterday where Peter said, well, what about them? We like to focus on the other person. But you'll notice here right out of the gate that Peter says, wives, submit yourselves. He's a different instruction for husbands. He doesn't say, husbands, subjugate your wives. It's not what he says. He says, wives, submit yourselves. And he says something later, something different to husbands. So husbands often like to focus on this part while failing to do their part. It's the what about thing. Well, no, you're supposed to do this when they're not even fulfilling. It's, where Paul writes, wives in Ephesians chapter 5, submit one to another, first of all, he says. Right? Submit one to another. Wives, submit to your husbands. Right? And then he says, husbands, wives, love your wives as Messiah loved the church, loved the Kehillah, and gave himself for her. So, wives are to submit as to the Lord. And so if you look at who are they likened to, how often have God's people adequately submitted to him? Well, we stop and start, we fail, right? Husbands, love your wives with a perfectly selfless love. I mean, our model as husbands, as the head, we like to claim headship, and the Bible speaks of us as the head, but the head is the one who's responsible to care for the entirety of the body. That my head is not to crush my body, is to love my body. My head is to take care of my body, to care for it. And so the response, and so to do it wholly and completely. And so that's where the focus here is not for men to walk around going, see, women, this is what God wants of you. It's ultimately, he goes from those with less authority, less power, to those with more and more authority. So he goes from slaves and now to the wives. He says, be submitted. Be submitted. Submit yourselves. He's in the ancient writings, in the Greek philosophical writings of the time, they wouldn't have addressed either. Slaves weren't addressed and women weren't addressed. So it's revolutionary already in here in that he is speaking directly to them. He's writing and he's speaking directly to them as though they are someone, because they are someone. And so it's the fact that he's speaking to them is already revolutionary for the culture. In the Greco-Roman culture, it would have been expected that the wife would have no friends of her own outside of her husband's circles, and that she would worship the gods of her husband. So the fact is, the fact that you've got a woman who is a believer and this is being addressed to a woman who's married to an unbeliever in particular. The goal here is to win him. He's an unbeliever. And so how are you going to win him? How, wives married to an unbelieving husband, how are you going to transform your home? How are you going to win your husband? So this would have been her having this belief system separate from her husband would have already been threatening to him. It would have been something that challenged him. And for her now to be developing relationships outside of his circle would have been threatening as well. So he says here, be submitted to your own husbands. And it uses this word, which I'm going to tell you, it's idios, not like idiot, not your idiot husbands. It's idios, like idiosyncrasies, like particular, unique. So this is not somehow this overall idea that, hey, women, that you're submit to everybody else's husbands too, that men in general get to dominate you. No, it's be submitted to your own particular husbands. Be submitted to your husbands. Be submitted to your husbands, so that even if some are not, it says, are not persuaded of the word, they've not yet been convinced of the word, that through that which comes from your conduct, the impact of your way of life upon them. See, they've not been convinced of the word. And so it says, literally it says they've not been convinced of the logos, of the word. So then that through your conduct, the overflow of the conduct of your life without a word, they may be gained, they may be won, the kingdom will profit. It's a commercial term. They may be gained to the kingdom. And so there is this idea. It doesn't mean they've not been convinced of the word. So what will convince them is your way of life, your conduct, as they observe, verse 2, as they observe your pure and respectful, reverent conduct, as they observe this in you, is what they see in you. Verse 3, which is not to be that which is external, what they're supposed to be focused on, what they're to be observing in you, because literally it says, which is not to be that which is external, braided hair, wrapped in gold, or clothed in adorning of garments. It doesn't use the word beauty here, but it's saying what they're to be observing is not to be the focus on the external. So this is not, so this is not forbidding doing your hair. This is not forbidding wearing jewelry. This is not forbidding wearing adorning garments. It's saying that's not to be what their focus is. What they're looking at, what they see in you, the beautiful thing about you, what will win them is not your outward, but what is the overflow of your life. So it's not to be that which is external. Now, on a side note, different things that I've read would pointed out that in the ancient world, there was for women to wear cosmetics, because the adornment, the word is cosmos, which has to do with cosmetics here, and their braided hair. They were seen as seductive. So for a woman to be going outside of her home without her husband to a gathering would also potentially have been threatening. So if she goes out without all of that kind of adorning look, then it convinces him as well that she is solely seeking to worship the Lord. That's a side effect there. But the goal here, again, is to win her husband to the Lord. So what he's to be observing is not to be the external, the braiding of the hair, wearing of gold, or being adorned in fine clothes. It says, but instead, let it be that which is hidden, kryptos, the cryptic, what's deep within, what's encrypted in the heart of a man, in that which is incorruptible, of a gentle and a restful spirit, a gentle and peaceful spirit, which in the sight of God is very costly. And the word for costly there is the same word that's used when in the Gospels when it talks about the woman with the jar of alabaster that was really expensive. That's the picture there. So what they're to be experiencing is what is overflowing from the depth of your spirit. And this doesn't have to do with somehow people have taken not without a word and a quiet spirit to be reflective of this idea that women are not supposed to speak into their husbands' lives. And that's not what's being expressed here. What there is to be is the fruit of the Spirit in her life of gentleness and of a peace that is not... it's not shaken, and we'll see that in the following verses. But there's a gentleness that this is the character, the fruit of the Spirit, a character of a human spirit that has been and is being transformed by Yeshua. That what will be evidence to the unbelieving husband is the beauty of what the Lord has done and is doing within you. For this is the way, verse 5, this is the way the holy women who put their hope in God used to beautify themselves long ago. It says, for in this way it was formerly that the holy women, the ones who hoped in God, adorned themselves, being submitted to their particular husbands, to their idios, their specific husbands. So they were holy women, it says here, not because what made them holy was their hope was in God. Their hope was in the Lord. Like Hebrews 11:13 argues, they trusted in God and they looked forward to this future redemption, right? We've talked about in chapter 1, a salvation that is yet to be revealed. This hoping. What made them holy was that they were not prisoners of the moment, but they saw that the Lord, they had their hope in God, that God would see them through. And this is how it was. And now they give the example of Abraham and Sarah. Just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, Kurios, and in when you look in the Hebrew, this is drawn from Genesis 18:12, right? Genesis 18:12 is when the Lord tells Sarah that she's going to have a baby, and she laughs. She laughed to herself, saying, "After I've grown decrepit, can I have the desire?" And then she points to her husband. "And my Lord, my master, so old." That's the context, by the way, of where she called him Lord. Because it was common to always refer to her husband with that level of respect. And the women of old, it's saying they spoke of their husbands in that way with respect. And he uses this to say, she listened to him. She listened to her husband. And you do see that evidence. You see even on multiple times when he took them to Egypt, she listened to him. But what you also see, if you're going to point back, by the way, to Abraham and Sarah, you also see that the Lord, there's actually a verse, actually, Antonio, do pull this one up, in Genesis 21:12, when after Isaac is born, and Abraham just is trying to figure out what to do because there's all this commotion, this problem now with Hagar and Ishmael, and now Isaac's here, and the Lord actually said to Abraham, "Don't be distressed." Are you there yet? Yeah, I pulled it up. Okay. God said to Abraham, "Don't be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, Shema, listen and do. Listen to her, for through Isaac your descendants will be named." So there's actually the Lord instructing then Abraham to listen to Sarah. What you see in Abraham and Sarah's relationship is not one of dominance, right? That's not the picture that you have there. And so she is given it as an example. And what in her respect of her husband, she called him Lord, but again, it was in a context in which she's openly, or she's going, "Oh, I'm going to have this," There's not, "I'm going to have this delight now when I'm old, and look at my Lord here. He's old too. What are we going to do? I mean, he's older than me. Now we're going to be parents." But the point overall has to do with wives, that you can't control your husband. You can't control this situation. You can't control other people. Who are you going to be here? Now, again, there are those who use these passages as have used them as a bludgeoning. Like, well, it says when he was abused, he just took it. So you're supposed to just take the abuse. And so these passages have been through the years twisted up and used as a bludgeon by men who call themselves believers, men who say, so many from the pulpit, it's continually, it's used as, these passages are used to make women feel like there's nothing you can do about it. You are to be subject, when it's submit yourselves. Husbands, you have it doesn't say subject your wife. That's not what it tells you. In the next verse, it doesn't say, now, husbands, you keep them in line. You subject them. You make them submit. Right? That's not what it says. Now it comes to the one who has the most authority in the home. And it says, did I read the back end of verse 6? Oh, I didn't, which is very important. Just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, you have become her daughters by doing what is good and not fearing intimidation, right? So while there's this, she's not walking in a fear and an intimidation. She's not fearing anything terrifying. You've been called her daughters as you walk in this way, but you're not, it doesn't have you as this cowering little flower that should just has to fear intimidation. So their subordination is revolutionary in that they're subordinate because they submit themselves. They're choosing to be there so that their husbands may be one. That's the goal, is to love as Messiah loved. Now again, if your husband's a believer, then he shouldn't even be focused on that. You focus on that. If you're two believers that are married, then you focus on who you're supposed to be. But the husbands in the same way. So now this applies to you, husbands, as to us, husbands as well. Live with your wives in an understanding way. Now I'm gonna work with our translation here in a minute, okay? I'm gonna read the way the TLV says it, which I do not like at all. That it says, though they are weaker partners, honor them as equal heirs of the grace of life. In this way, your prayers will not be hindered. Okay, so let's go through this. It says, husbands, homios, in the same way, likewise, live with, it doesn't actually say live with them, it implies your wives, live with your wives, live with them, according to knowledge, according to understanding, according to perception, recognizing, knowing them. Live with your wives, knowing them. And then it uses what a word Peter has used regularly through these first two chapters and into here. It uses the word hos, omega sigma. And it's a word that means, it's a simile, like. So it's not saying though, even though they are weaker partners. It's saying, like a vessel that is, it uses the phrase for delicate. Like a vessel that's delicate, and I want to get into, because all of these terms, even for us now, still are loaded with baggage that has been tagged on through the years. So when I say delicate or fragile, it doesn't have to do with the nature of who she is. It has to do with the nature of how I handle her. So love your wives in a way of understanding, in a way that is of knowing her, like you would treat something, a vessel, like a fragile vessel. Like a fragile vessel, your wives. And then it says, where it says, honor them as equal heirs. It says, apomenotes, which is to render what is due. You give her the honor that is due to her. The value, times, the honor, the value, the respect that is due to her as a co-inheritor, as one who shares the inheritance of the grace of the grace of life. So the picture is, live with your wives in an understanding way, like knowing what you've got, like you would treat something that is valuable and precious, like you would a weaker vessel. So I've got two different things. I brought this coffee cup, which is a regular coffee cup. If I drop and break this coffee cup, it's disappointing, but it's not very valuable, and it's easily replaceable. This, I lift this up, my son says, careful. Exactly. Not because this is weaker. If I drop either of these, they break. Not because this has less value, it has more value. This is unique. This was costly. How do I walk around with this? Where do I set this? Well, this has a special place that I put it. I treat this with great value when I walk around with it. It doesn't mean it's weak. Look, they're both fragile. They're both fragile. They're both breakable. But how would you treat? So men, don't be careless treating your wife as though she's just anyone. Husbands, you need to recognize her for what she is. She's an equal partner. She's a co-inheritor of the grace of life with you. So this itself is revolutionary. This is not telling the husband that he gets to dominate her, and it's not saying, well, even though she's weaker, treat her like she's equal. No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying, as you would care, this is about our behavior. It's not about the quality of who she is. In terms of weaker. It's about how we would handle something that is precious and valuable to us. So as you would a breakable vessel, treat her, render her the honor that is due to her as a co-inheritor of life. That changes it. That changes it. That changes it. And I don't have time to go into the whole idea of the absurdity of the weaker, the picture we have of women as weaker, where we are different. We are different with different strengths. And so we, when we talk about, even if you think about it, I don't have time to go into all of this, but when you look at the Genesis account, that she was made as a helper, kenegedo, which is in front of him, opposite him, taken from his side, to see what he can't see. A revealer, and it uses the word neged, which is to make known, to reveal. So the one she is a revealer to him. Right from the beginning, and not like his little assistant. There's an equality. They were Adam. They were Ish and Isha. Adam was Ish and Isha, man and woman. And so it's the idea. I've gone through this in greater detail in other places, and I don't have time to go long this morning. But the goal is, husbands, are you living with your wives in an understanding way? Because the buck stops with us. When we don't understand what's happening, when we think we understand or we perceive something to be a certain way, are we living with them with knowledge, with knowing them, with recognizing the preciousness, the value of what she brings, of who she is? Am I treating her with the kind of care that I would treat something that is breakable? Again, not suggesting somehow she's this fragile, breakable thing. We all have our different areas of fragility. This can easily be broken as well. It's saying, the question is, how are you treat her? Live with her in an understanding way, as you would a weaker vessel. And then, here's the issue. Into this, do this, lest your prayers be hindered. Do this, don't do this lest your prayers be hindered, lest they be cut off. So to live with your wife in an understanding way is not simply to, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? I like what someone else described as the platinum rule, which is do unto her as she would have you do unto her. Understand her. understand, know her, live with her in an understanding way. What does she desire? What does she want? What does she need? And if that's your responsibility, and both, you'll notice that within each side, for husbands and wives, because we live in a broken world, people approach what I've said from both sides with fears of abuse. Well, if I just give her what she needs, or so forth and so on, then that's just going to be taken advantage of. And no, that's not what that's saying at all. Live with your wives in an understanding way. And this is speaking, the assumption here is that she is a believer. And the implication is that she is a believer, because first of all, in the culture then, wives would have been, they had to do what their husbands did. But here it says she is a co-inheritor of the grace of life, of the supernatural life that the Lord has for us. But when we don't live with our wives in an understanding way, in Ephesians it says, love your wives as Messiah loved the church and gave himself for her. When we don't do it in a God-ordained way, it hinders our prayers. The moment the husband has been given a place, has been permitted a place as the head of his family. Again, Ephesians talks about that. And that isn't something God has entrusted to you to do as he would do. That you're to lead your family, we're to lead our families as he himself would. So when we use the advantage, we use it to our advantage. When we use the place of authority in an earthly way to dominate rather than to serve, when we don't, because listen, the Lord understands us. He ministers to us. He meets us where we are. When we begin to misuse what God has given us to dominate, we lose the ear of God. It says, go do it this way, lest your prayers are cut off, lest they're hindered. God, why aren't you listening? Why aren't you hearing? And it's because when we walk in this, when we twist up what God has given us to dominate, to crush, and do it in the name of Yeshua, there is judgment that we face for that. So we need to obey the Lord, live with our wives in an understanding way. Okay, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m.
Thank you so much for joining us for Daily Manna today. May the work that the Holy Spirit has stirred in your heart today overflow from you to the lives of those you encounter. May Yeshua's love bubble forth from you to your family and your friends and your co-workers, even and especially the people who might be unkind to you. Let's be life-giving water bottles in the land that is dry and weary, where there has been no water. Please don't forget to download our Shalom AZ app on your phone or streaming device. It's the easiest way to watch services, access devotionals, and share teachings with friends and family. Just search Shalom AZ in your app store. And again, if you've been blessed by Shalom AZ Ministries but haven't yet taken that step to give, would you prayerfully consider sowing into what God is doing here? Your giving is instrumental, helping us live stream services, create devotionals, and reach people who are hungry for truth and hope. As you give, you're not only meeting needs, you are partnering with the Lord to give life and transformation to countless hearts. We're grateful that as you give to him, you're entrusting Shalom AZ Ministries to be faithful stewards of your worship and giving. Again, the easiest way to give is through our app or online at shalomaz.com/give. You can also mail a check to our P.O. Box. And remember, please join us for Daily Manna, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Arizona time. If you can't join us live, that's okay. The food is still hot and ready for you. Together, let's be built on the richness of God's Word at work in our lives by the power of His Spirit. Thanks again for being here. Let's let Yeshua have His way in us as we go forward to serve Him wholeheartedly. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful